Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and we've got a TwoSun this time. A TwoSun that is in stock. At least it's in stock when I'm recording this on Saturday, August 14th, 2021. $44.99 US for this knife. That's a good price. This is a knife that's been overlooked a fair bit. There's not much out there about this knife, and I think it's a really good full-size folder. It's on the smaller side of full-size folders, but you know, it easily fits into my extra large hands and still has some handle to spare right there. D2 blade, a designer Caleb Fletcher, or Fletcher without no T, Fletcher. And I think it's a pretty good knife. It's a liner lock, flipper, ceramic ball bearings. At least all TwoSun knives are ceramic. I'll open it up and take a look inside. I got mine at White Mountain Knives, and you can get 10% off when you shop there with coupon code CCE. And the only other place I've seen this right now is on eBay. The same $44.99 there, but no discount. But hey, get it wherever you want to get it. I'm just going to show you what it is. Keep watching. All right, here it is. We've got an OD green G10 with carbon fiber laminate on top. And then you've got these two lines milled on either side. And this funny section up here where there's these little slots milled through the G10 and through the steel liners. These are 420 stainless steel blade liners. They're highly skeletonized. Quite nice. The shape we've got on this handle, it's a flat back, and then it's just got sort of a rounded nose here. And then it's just sort of a belly on the handle. And it just feels quite nice in the hand. We've got these edges here. They're rounded on the belly side. And with this cove put here on the spine, it just feels nice. You get a decent grip in your hand when you're holding it, at least I do. Feels okay. The pocket clip, yeah, the budget TwoSun pocket clip. It's too big. It sticks out too far. It's awkward. And the other problem with the pocket clip is it's one side only. It's just screwed onto the surface of the handle, which means they really could have easily put two holes right here and made it two-sided. It's a functional pocket clip. It works okay, but it's clunky on here. It's a little bit clunky in my opinion. And if you're going to get a hot spot in the hand, it's going to be that pocket clip to create a little bit of a hot spot. In the right hand, not so much. When you're using it left-handed, then you know the fingertips of your last two fingers kind of get irritated a little bit by that. So the few left-handed people out here, you know, it's not that great with a pocket clip. You know, if you're going to use it with a leather sleeve, you know, just toss the pocket clip, then maybe. And it could be decent that way. But I really wish TwoSun would spend more time designing pocket clips for all their knives and not slapping on, you know, this universal low-end pocket clip. At least it's a whole lot better than they initially did on their first set of budget knives way back when. So there's that. The handle has got one body screw at the back, a back spacer here, no lanyard option. I like their nice big screws that they put in, like no button screws up here for the body. The pivot screw, we've sort of got a button back side and then a nice big button screw on the show side. It doesn't look out of place on this knife, so I'm not complaining about that screw. The liner lock, there's just a little bit of a relief cut on the working side here to get access to the liner lock, but I didn't have any problems releasing that liner lock whenever I wanted to get in there and close the knife one-handed. It just worked fine. With the left hand, it worked fine as well. The only thing I did find during my testing, it built up with gunk right back in here, like between the liner lock arm and the G10, you know, skin, you know, just built up in there and it got a little dirty. But that happens quite a lot on a lot of liner lock knives. Not that big a deal, but just giving you all the information. Lockup, there's a little bit of a side-to-side wiggle on this right now. There wasn't when I first got it. I've not had to adjust the pivot screw at all. But, oh, and let's show you. It's fairly close to this one side, and so it's not centered very well. But what happens if we snug it up a little bit? And, oh, is it just spinning freely? Yeah, it's spinning freely. The pivot screw is spinning freely, so one thing that I do to help tighten up with that, my finger on this side is putting on pressure, and I do a very quick jerk motion. It tends to move the screw before the bolt can hold it. And now that's tighter. It's a little closer to being centered, but it's still there. And yeah, now it's holding it so tight that it doesn't want to flip out. Let's open it anyways. There's still a little bit of a side-to-side wiggle on this, even though I've snugged it up so much that it doesn't really want to move back and forth all that well. Let's just do this about 50 times back and forth like this really quick. And see if that's loosened it up enough. Yeah, it's loosened it up a bit already. So yeah, this pivot screw, just like is common on a lot of TwoSun knives, you're going to want to do something about that pivot screw or it's always coming loose. I like Vibratite's VC3 thread mate a whole lot more than Loctite, but Loctite is also an option on these screws. The lockup point is quite good. It's fully engaged and there's still room to wear over, so no complaints with that. The blade centering, I already talked about that. The flipper tab, it's got some jimping. It's got 3 lines milled into the front of it, so it's good for light switch method. That works just fine. And even pushing down on an angle, that works as well. We'll show you the insides of the knife a little bit later. Now for the blade shape, it looks like it's just a drop point blade, but interestingly, there's a little transition right there, and then it's a clip point. So it's sort of a drop point meets clip point kind of blade, but it's got a lot of thickness behind that tip. That's a very strong tipped knife. We've got a flat grind that comes not all the way to the spine, so it's a high flat grind. A sharpener's choil that's a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but it's not exceedingly outside of what I would like it to be. And then there's a fuller that goes along the blade, on the spine of the blade, all the way along. You've got that hole, but you can't access that hole from the bottom to flip the knife open. It's just an elongated hole that they put on there. The inside of the fuller looks like it's got a bead blast, but everything else has got a satin finish. There's no jimping on the spine of the blade, none on the spine of the handle or anywhere, so there's no jimping to be found except for that little bit on that flipper. It doesn't really need it. It fits quite well and comfortably in the hand, and you get decent grip, in part due to these lines milled in here. It just helps the grip. And these little milled in lines that I talked about before, they help with the grip as well. It's comfortable. If you want to do some piercing, you can get your thumb behind the end of the handle easily enough, and you can do some piercing. If you want to do, some reverse cutting, it's still comfortable that way. Fist grip, saber grip, it's a reasonably comfortable knife in hand. It punctures really well, and it slices quite well as well. And that's because of how thin it is behind the grind in large part. On this side, we've got the logo. It says KE on top. I don't know why it says KE. And then right there it says D2. And on the other side, we have just the TwoSun logo on the bevel. So there's not an exceeding amount of branding on the knife. I wouldn't mind if the D2 was smaller, and maybe even the TwoSun a little bit smaller. That would be nice, but it's okay. Size comparison with the Ontario Rat 1. Let's bring that down here. Like I said, this is a pretty good sized knife. It just looks smaller than it really is. If you line this up with the pivot pins, it's almost the same length as the Rat. The blade's a little bit shorter, but cutting edge is actually a little bit longer than the interior rat. Before we go over the sizes and measurements, let's take this thing apart. So here's the knife taken apart, and because there's no Loctite on these screws, it came apart just fine. I only had to use one screwdriver, didn't have to, put pressure on the other side. It just came apart just fine. Lots of skeletonizing, as you can see. And there's the free spinning round pivot, which didn't become bothersome, as I just said. Here's the track that the stop pin rides in. We've got the captured stop pin that's on the blade right there. And so that rides right in that slot. So there's no, that's when it's open, it touches there, and when it's closed, it touches there to keep the blade from striking anything. Ceramic ball bearings, just a set of little ones, 6 little ball bearings, and a ceramic detent ball there. And now you can clearly see that long row of holes in there. I wish there was just a little bit more skeletonizing. That would have been fine. It would have helped to lighten it up. And this might be why they didn't add any holes on the other side for the pocket clip, possibly because they skeletonized it so much. It's already a little bit handle heavy, and if they made this solid here to put screw holes in, it would be a little bit more handle heavy as well. I'll put it back together and show you where the balance point is, and then go over all the sizes and dimensions. Okay, now that I've cleaned it all out, put my lighter lubricant in there, it actually flips open a little bit easier, and there's no blade play side to side still. So that little bit of a problem that we had with the blade play, that was simply overcome by cleaning it up and putting in some nice light oil. It still doesn't have very good blade alignment, but it doesn't touch the side, so I'm fine with that. I was going to talk about the balance point right there. I didn't demonstrate the pocket clip, so we got to do that just before we go over the sizes and dimensions. This kind of shape works well. It climbs over the edge of your pocket all the time. It goes to the full depth, and it's okay. But like you see, there's a lot of play in here. Like the denim can slide wherever it wants to. If they would put flush screws in there instead of those big button screws, they could put this much closer to the handle, and they could put in a smaller pocket clip, and it would just work better, feel better, look better, be better. And now it's time to go over all the sizes, dimensions, and things. How much does this knife weigh? 92 grams, 3.5 ounces. So not bad. The edge sharpness. From the factory, this edge was 55 bests. That's very close to some of the best, the sharpest knives I've ever reviewed. So that's a really good thing. The length of the cutting edge, 86.4 millimeters, 3.4 inches. The blade length, so tip to the closest spot on the G10 here, 91.9 millimeters, 3.62 inches. The blade thickness is 3.23 millimeters, 0.127 of an inch, so just over 1/8 of an inch thick. The blade depth, its largest right back here, 20.4 millimeters, 0.8 of an inch. The thickness behind the grind, 0.38 millimeters. That's 15 thousandths of an inch. It slices well because of that. It also slices well because of grind angles. This side, the angle is about 22.6 with about 1/2 degree variability along the length. That's awesome. This side, 18.8 degrees. Again, very little variability along the length of the knife. So it's been very well sharpened, even though one side's about 19 and the other side's about 22.5. D2 like this, on this knife, I'd probably sharpen it to 18 degrees per side. The handle length is 116.7 millimeters, 4.59 inches. The grip area, it's right around 11 centimeters, 4 1/3 inches. The thickness of the handle, not counting the clip, 12.86 millimeters, that's 0.505, so 1/2 inch thick. The handle depth The biggest spot in the grip is right there, 21.6 millimeters, 0.85 of an inch. When the knife is closed, it's biggest right here by the flipper, 26 millimeters, 1.02 inches. And I didn't do the conversion again. The full length of this knife is 208.6 millimeters. The inches is on the screen, but just to show you guys, it's just under 8¼ inches long when it's open. So that's not bad at all. I like this knife. It's not too heavy. It's functional. It looks interesting. It certainly isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it's got an interesting look. Performs very well on the pivot. Well, fairly well, I should say. I don't mind that. It cuts quite well. It's strong behind the tip, so you can use it for piercing things if you need to. It's got the right kind of shape and proportions for being a piercing blade. Sharpener's choil is a little bigger than it needs to be. Not bad. And, you know, it's a fairly comfortable handle. The big thing that the perennial thing that I'd like to say to TwoSun, if anybody from TwoSun's listening, is start doing better pocket clips, even on your budget knives. This is better than what you originally started with, but you need to do better because that makes the knife a little bit uncomfortable, especially in the left hand. So, you know, this is $44.99 American. If you would have put on a nice clip, make it $54.99. You add $10 and this thing would still fly off the shelves, because then it would be a complete unit instead of a nice knife with an add-on clip. Just saying. I like there's good hardware on here. It's good quality screws on the pocket clip and everywhere else. There's no Loctite in there, which I prefer. So even though these things are free spinning, they're easy to take apart and put back together. I am a little bit concerned after I put some Vibratite in here, how easy will it be to take this apart? It's going to be more difficult. But unfortunately, there's not much else I can do. If they would have put a T8 head on each side, you know, then it would be easy enough to take back apart, even if there's some thread locker in there. But that's the other perennial issue with TwoSun knives. They come loose after just a very small amount of work or use. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's free spinning and it's going to become a bad thing when you add some Loctite or thread locker, you know, then, you know, it becomes a bad thing. So I'm not saying add Loctite from the factory. I'm saying don't make it free spinning. Put on those D-shaped pins in there and you'll have solved all the problems that I'm talking about regarding the pivot. A little bit off center with the alignment. I don't mind on this budget knife. Well, it's not a budget knife, but it's a budget knife indeed. So there you go. What do you think of this knife, guys? Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.